Hello, I'm Feli, and I got accepted into the Sheridan Bachelor of Animation program a few months ago. I tried applying last year in 2022, but I missed a step in the early application process, so I couldn't submit my portfolio at all. And I finished early on time, only to find out I didn't have a student account. So I ended up taking a gap year due to not applying to any other schools that year. Lucky for me, it's exactly what I needed at the time. Grade 12 was stressful, so taking a break and having time to practice on and focus on myself made it the best year I've had in a long time. Only thing was that the gap year was unintentional because I was already mentally prepared to graduate and go into college right away. Moral of the story is, don't be dumb like me and read the instructions you were given carefully. Anyways, here's my score sheet this year. The domestic cutoff this year was 90% and the international cutoff was 95%. I just barely made it in with the 93%. The first thing they asked for were the figure drawings, the 2 short poses around 1 to 3 minutes long and 2 long poses which can be 5 to 20 minutes long. I got a 10 out of 10 for this section, the only one with full marks, which I was surprised about actually. I wasn't too confident in this section, to be honest. From what I've seen from other accepted portfolios and what I've also heard is that in short poses they want to see more fluidity and movement in the figure than the structure. Capturing the energy of the figure for short poses and using the line of action can be useful here. For long poses, structure can be more focused on with the more time you have on them. They want to see how well you understand anatomy and form, which means the 3D-ness of the body. Just make sure they don't look flat. My poses were mostly found online only because I couldn't find new life drawing sessions for free in my area, and it's just a lot easier to access online references. But if you are able to attend in-person sessions, I highly recommend it. Not only are there other artists to surround yourself with, but drawing a model in person is just a lot more grounding of an experience. I did find a few in-person clothes sessions, and it was super fun to see all the artists gathered around and a big ego boost to have strangers walk by and whisper to each other, "Wow, amazing, such a good artist." Another thing I want to mention is that a medium people usually recommend using is Conte and newsletter paper. Conte is just a waxier kind of charcoal. My friend Christo finished his second year already, and he was a huge help during the whole process. For his first year, they required the use of Conte for the figure drawing section, and that's because they use it in the figure drawing classes in the program. So if you are able, try practicing with Conte and with your figure drawings just to get an early start. I use regular pencils in mine, but I have a few drawings using Conte and they just weren't good enough for the final portfolio submission. Experimenting is good, but if it's not necessary or your best work, don't put it in the portfolio. You want to present the best of your abilities. One last tip for figure drawings. Because they're so quick to do, it's so important that you start practicing early. After I graduated high school, I took one of my sketchbooks and used it entirely for figure drawing. I didn't do it as often as I would like, but a full 2-hour session every month is a pretty good start. As portfolio season neared, I would do a full session about once a week. That way you have a bunch of options to choose from for the final submission. Next are hand drawings, which I got a 9 out of 10 on. This took the least amount of time out of the whole portfolio, which was around 2 hours total. I'm not too sure about what I may have lost marks on, but I've always heard about how Sheridan profs like to see the understructure of the hand. I think at the time I was too lazy to put them in after finishing anyways, so I might as well take the L. The prompt this year was to have a hand holding and releasing an object. Make sure the anatomy is correct and it shows structure and form. They also like seeing the anticipation of the poses as well, so capturing the movement is very ideal. Next is the character rotation, which I received a 13 out of 15 on. You had to rotate a character of your own in front view, 3/4 front view, side view, and 3/4 back view. I already learned from my first portfolio attempt that underestimating this section was a huge mistake, so I started working on it first of all the requirements. I had to watch a few YouTube videos on how to rotate characters, and the main thing I learned was to have a central point and the character to rotate. As you can see on my character, her head starts moving off the center the more she turns to the side. So I used her feet as a central rotation point. I think the hardest part about this was drawing her 2 hair buns and her feet in perspective. I struggled a lot with this section, so I had to leave it for a few weeks in between working on her. My biggest tip for this part would be to go easy on yourself, especially if you never rotated a character before. It'd be easier to design a character with bigger and simpler shapes. Of course, this is only me speaking from personal experience, so it's completely up to you to decide how you want to approach this section. My initial idea was to have a round and small design because in my head, I thought it would be relatively easier to rotate than a character with realistic proportions. For the short animation, I got a 14 out of 15. You were required to make a short animation out of 24 to 48 images. This was only the second animation I've made, aside from the first portfolio attempt, but I've had a good idea of what the foundations are from watching videos and processes of other animation artists for a while. For this section, they give you a model sheet of the object, so all you have to do is stay on model and show that you understand the basics of animation. Squash, stretch, anticipation, follow through, etc. I had to keep in mind things such as the delayed movements of the straw since it's separate from the juice box's main body, and the wrinkling of the box shape when it's bent. I think what I might have lost marks on is the last part where it falls over. It might have been too choppy at the end, or the falling after the big jump might have been too fast, but again, I'm not too sure. On the storyboard, I got a 19 out of 20, which was way better than I thought at first. While submitting it, I was too nervous to be that confident anyways. The prompt this year was better safe than sorry. What I've learned from this section is that you want to prioritize clarity overall. The story should be made as clear and concise as you possibly can. Stay on model with the character sheet given, and of course, follow the prompt. I did have my doubts about the simplicity of my story idea, but what's most important is the execution and not the idea. Also, make sure to have a good variety of shots. If you study an animated film, you'll see a multitude of camera angles and zooming ins and outs. Those are specifically chosen to tell the story in the most effective way. With only 4 panels, you have to make the best of it with 4 different shots, but keeping it comprehensible to the audience. The only thing I can think of that I may have lost marks on is the last panel, for making it slightly off model, but I made him super cute, so I have no regrets. Onto the perspective line drawings, which I got a 14 out of 15 on. The only one I was actually confident about, actually, oh my gosh. The interior took me 50 years off my life figuring out the windows and the composition, but I think I could have done better on the overall line quality. The perspective of the front pot looks a little funky too, but that's about all I can think of. From what I've heard, the professors like to see a story with the layout drawings, and besides having the correct perspective, you want to have a good composition and line quality, meaning thicker lines in the foreground and thinner lines in the background or for smaller details. After finishing my interior after a couple weeks, I started on my exterior piece right after and finished it within 2 days. I don't know what I was on during that time, but the exterior was so much easier without all the rigid lines. I had a lot more fun lining my exterior as well, so that definitely helped with my productivity. Value grouping them isn't exactly necessary, but I do feel that it helped boost the overall look to my layouts. Finally, we have the personal artwork section, which I got a 14 out of 15 on, which is fair, I think. What I hear people saying a lot is that they value variety and animation-focused art, which I didn't have a lot of. For my last year of high school, I took AP art, so I used some of my traditional paintings from that time. I couldn't use the class credits, but I at least had some portfolio pieces ready. I only ever really drew fan art in my last few years of doing art, so I knew the personal section would be the most difficult in challenging my creativity, which is something I struggle with on a regular basis. I did this section last, so the execution of a few pieces are a little bit rushed. I do wish I could have done better in some areas, but it was acceptable. My sketchbook was very fun, however. It's important to bring your sketchbook everywhere you go, and whenever you get the chance to sit and relax a bit, take it out and draw whatever is in front of you. Observation sketches and figure studies from real life is a very good way to go for sketchbook art. I also did a few color studies, but mainly did sketches from life. The last pages are all life drawings from a cultural clothing themed life drawing session I went to. I did them about a week before the deadline, and having normal people just walk by wowing at my art gave me the final push to submit the final portfolio. But overall, my personal section definitely had room to improve in creativity and variety. I see a lot of personal works with high-scoring portfolios have things like character development, rotations, short animations, and layout designs. It's not absolutely necessary, but based off of what I've seen, it's very helpful to do some personal work based on the portfolio sections. If they see you have a lot of experience in the program's material, They see you as someone with more potential than someone who, for example, submitted only paintings. If you are more of an illustration person like I am, go for illustrations that tell a story. Animation is all about storytelling, which is why storyboarding is worth so much more on the final score. As a conclusion, this won't be a portfolio video if I didn't tell you to start early. You will not believe the pain you have to experience submitting a portfolio filled with rushed pieces, topped off with the dissatisfaction you feel afterwards. Start doing regular figure drawing sessions, carry around your sketchbook everywhere, find some friends to be productive with, and trust me, my friends carried me and my entire mental well-being throughout the portfolio season. I would have gone insane without them. I joined the Sheridan Animation Hopefuls Discord server, which changes every year, but it was also a huge help having like-minded students around to help with critique and be productive together, but also, most importantly, take breaks when necessary. Starting early will allow you the time to step away from your work and take a breather. Stand up and stretch every few hours. Only then can you look back at it with fresh eyes. Anyways, that's all for my portfolio video. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck to you all, Sheridan Hopefuls.